Okay. Hello, this is the fifth video in the blog series for assessment GAT320. 12 games, 12 weeks. This segment where we pick a game that we want to play in, give analysis to. I decided to choose ATTILA, which is a strategy game developed by Creative Assemblies. I'm going to talk about the use of architecture and implementation of story narrative in the user experience. So what we're looking at here is a Danish town. The particular situation we're in is the Danes are defending their hometown against the forces of Charlemagne. So this is actually set after Attila, to give it some context. Charlemagne was a ruler who united a lot of Western Europe during the Middle Ages and brought Christianity to a lot of places, which Norse cultures weren't too fond of originally. It grew on them eventually, but originally there was quite a lot of conflict which took place. So this is a little bit pre-Viking Age. You could argue very early Viking Age would be starting. So this is not the height of the Viking era by any means. Charlemagne reigned, I think, from the late 7th century to the early 8th century, and the Viking Age kind of started late 8th century and went on to the 11th century. So, as far as big kind of settlements go, this is probably as big as you'd get pre to the Viking era. This is a very large settlement, if that was the case. So, there's a bit of a siege going on, but let's have a look at the town from above. So we got a very large walled city. Usually, many Viking walled, like fortress kind of buildings were ring fortresses. So it's unusual to have a shape like this. So it must have been a village. I suspect is a trading settlement due to the large amount of trade that we see going on over here. And it was walled afterwards, so it wasn't originally designed to be a defendable position, but obviously these Vikings are being attacked, which is not a good plan, attacking Vikings. So as far as architecture goes, the use of architecture, I think this is a very good example of realistic implementation of and storytelling with the architecture. They've got the majority of these Viking houses right with the decorations here, and Viking houses often had a fire pit hearth in the middle on the floor, kind of like this, just dug into the floor, and smoke would rise up and fill the top of the house, which would kill any insects that were inside, and they had a small hole to release the steam, obviously. So they'd also hang foodstuffs, dried meat, vegetables, herbs, and things from the rafters to prevent this. Generally, smaller villages would have things more like this over here. These guys, which are longhouses, and your average longhouse would keep an extended family inside. So around.
A blaze has begun in the barricade. The enemy is attacking the barricade.
Our town's burning. But a longhouse could carry 20 to 40-ish people plus livestock, which they'd bring inside during the winter. They'd have like a section in the side which is walled off for the animals. So it's quite smelly. We can see here, as far as the narrative goes, it's quite cool. Like you got your communal area, fire pots, more possibly meat or something, and storage huts, meat stall. That's quite important when storytelling to have ancient kind of technology involved. So I found a lot of games that kind of lack context behind towns. They don't feel alive. Like here we've got you know, animals,
The enemy is at the walls.
fields, and things. But back to architecture. Viking architecture consists mainly of wood. They didn't use much metal. They didn't use much stone. Even nails. They used dowel and wooden nails to secure buildings together rather than metal nails. But they'd use metal rivets for decoration though. So it's an interesting way of building, and they weren't exactly a particularly good at building with stone and other things. So as a result of that, you end up with walls like these that you see here, which are wooden palisade walls. Well, palisades are over there, but wooden walls that are reinforced by the hill behind. And these are quite effective, even though they're not made of stone, because it's pretty hard to push over a wall which just has land behind it. So it wasn't completely useless. So I think it's an accurate portrayal of Viking architecture having all this wooden structure and not much stone structure. Another they got kind of the circle thing going on here. So this is obviously a little military camp here, which is defendable, which is quite cool. With palisade walls, which is also quite common. As far as archaeology goes, we know that it was all wooden because you get the shadows of decayed wood in the ground when they find these stations. But storytelling wise, showing the Christians versus Norse, we have a lot of things like this, which is rune stones and a statue of I believe that's Odin with his two birds here, two ravens. These are catapults positioned in between the forest, shooting out at the enemy forces down here. Some archers as well. That's quite cool. I'm guessing there'd be more evidence. There's more statues of Odin copied and pasted around. So it's definitely it has the Danish, like Norse culture incorporated. With some peasants here as well, just walking around. The story of the hasty troops getting ready for battle. Peasants probably don't even know what's going on.
The men are broken and running for their lives. Nothing remains of that tower now.
They're rushing in. The storytelling is pretty good for showing that there's a siege going on. People just washing out, hanging out. It's kind of like a Persian rugs, which is accurate. This kind of thing. The Viking people were very into trade. When they weren't raiding, they were trading. So trade was quite popular with even the Middle East, especially because it was so far away. When they got there, they didn't want to raid, so they would trade instead. So markets are a very, very prominent part of Viking society. They loved beads and metals and jewelry. They didn't decorate their houses as much. They did a lot of woodwork and carving, but nothing extravagant with stone. But they did decorate themselves with metal and all kinds of things like that. So I'm guessing this is a fortified trading village from the state of it not being a circle fortress. But it's still very believable. There's also will be very in the context of history would really be quite rich families that own these houses because having a house like this out of the ground is very it'd be very wealthy to afford a house like this. So a little blacksmith. Most Viking houses were made of were pit houses, so they were dug into the ground about a meter and then built around, kind of like this thing over here. I believe what we got. There's some farmsteads out of here, away from the battle. Yeah, it's not like this. The turf houses, which is a very nice little scene. and often they were made out of wood, or if there was no wood available, they'd make them out of
The men
a
are
combination
broken and running for
of
their
dirt
lives.
and I don't know exactly how should they do it, but they do dirt and would end up with grass growing on the roof and all that is quite cool. Um, as far as making this a believable town, it's very believable. It's surrounded by farms and forests, so you can see that these would be the farms supplying the town with its supplies. It's got its own port for what we suspect is trading, its own military kind of zones. Even here, there's like a horse, I guess, cavalry training area.
The men have thrown
Food,
down their
and
weapons
people can
and
come
are
here and
fleeing.
watch the tournament or something. It's definitely start telling a story to me. And the horses jumping over these fences and stuff. See, this is like a turf house. So this here you'd probably find these on their own, like around the countryside, with extended families living inside, tending to their farms and reaving the crops and of their labor. This area up here would probably be more extravagant. This is where the chief would and his family would live. At the top, they often did build large mead halls on top of structures to get close to the gods, things like that, etc. Just also looks cool, so it's yeah, very cool. I mean, these would all be buildings that would support the chief and his family who live in here. Even a market, supplies, gardens out the back here, growing
Our unit has used all its ammunition.
vegetables and things. People to do with the washing,
The enemy
meats,
general
meats.
is fallen.
So this would be a place of lots of merrymaking, I suspect, and partying. This was a very good defendable position. Using natural surroundings as a defensive thing was quite big in Scandinavia, I believe. Especially with their use of ring fortresses, where they would use the terrain more than they'd use any kind of material to defend. Like we see these walls. So this battle's really raging. I think I've fought them off this front, and now we're chasing them out of the town. I think we killed their enemy general really quickly, and the remainder of the enemy forces are routing. It's good. I actually was going to lose this battle because the odds were stacked against my army, but the AI wasn't particularly good. Getting early shots off of the catapults as well, burning their catapults, stopped them from taking down one of these walls, which is good. So I was able to hold off their siege. Yeah, but you can see the pathways and
Broken and running for their lives.
weathered by trade. Ancient, making everything with a kind of appearance that is medieval. It's not modern. I find like games like Skyrim that they lack a lot of the context behind it. Like you don't have things like this as much, where there's utilities. That's what the word. So the Vikings wouldn't have plumbing, so they'd have to have latrines, and there's evidence of things like that around, as well as stalls,
Victory! This
covers.
is your
Oh,
day.
looks like we chased them off. Yeah, so I feel Total War Tour does a very good job of saying a story. If you're fighting in like a Middle Eastern town, there'll be different architecture for different towns, and it definitely helps with the immersion. Having architecture which is realistic and representational, and the narrative's good as well. By having things that are real, you can generate your own narrative by looking at things like streets like this. This is a little street, and neighbors live here. They got blacksmithing, woodcutters near the wall. It's very cool. I guess I think I'm just chasing the last of them off now. Is Vikings charging after their enemies, chasing them away, chasing the Christians away. You'll be Christian in the end. There's lots of money in it. So yeah, like burned buildings as well. I guess that's a good story feature. If you're having a narrative about there being a battle here. These abandoned military camps, and people they've rushed out. It all generates the narrative that there's a war going on here, and that these are defenders of a siege. Abandoned an area. This Viking narrative and theme, very cool, very aesthetic. It's an aesthetic and level design, I guess, aesthetic architecture use that generates a story in itself, and it's very cool and effective. Right, cool. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.